mornings on RTHK Radio 3.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, RTHK Radio 3.
You're listening to the 123 show with me, Noreen Mir, on this Thursday afternoon. Let's turn to our first guest and topic of today. We're talking about panic buying, the panic buying mentality here in Hong Kong. With the outbreak of the new coronavirus, also known as Covid-19, we're seeing people scrambling for things like face masks, hand sanitizers, cleaning products, rice, and now the latest is even toilet paper. So why is everyone panic buying? Is it a matter of public's confidence in the government, or is it something deep rooted in our psyches? To mull over this, we are joined on the line by Eslyn Terragina, a chartered psychologist and also psychotherapist. Welcome to the program, Eslyn. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Noreen.
So what is your assessment of all this? Why are we panic buying?
Well, it's put us into uncertain times, hasn't it? We're not really sure what's going on with the virus. We're not sure about the numbers. I think there's some trust issues around the numbers as well. So ultimately, you know, the response from the government and so on is quite intense. So we're not sure, you know, schools are being shut, government gyms are being shut, government facilities are being shut. And as humans, we just don't like uncertainty. We don't know how long this is going on for. We don't really know how contagious the virus is. And humans thrive on predictability and control. So when that's not given, we sort of get very anxious and we try everything we can to regain that control and predictability.
Sorry, go on.
Just what we're seeing at the moment, the panic buying is very fear-driven in a way. And fear can, you know, it can overwhelm the system, right? So causing the prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning, to go offline a little bit. And once we're very fear-driven, we do fear-driven things, we take shortcuts, we take cues from others, and it can be quite contagious because we are herd animals, essentially. We do live in groups, so we pick up the cues from other people as well.
And are certain people more prone to panic buying? Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking impulse buying, for example. You know, some people will stand in the supermarket queue without even glancing at the gum or the chocolate bars, but there are people who will sort of fidget with it, and there are lots of people who will just sort of take it and put it in their trolleys. Is it like panic buying? Are certain people more prone to it?
I would say impulse buying and panic buying, we should probably separate those two, because panic buying is like I say, very, very fear-driven. Impulse buying is based on impulsivity. There are people that will be more prone to panic buying, which depends on your experience and what you've been through. So if you've gone through any sort of negative experience about health in the past, or SARS is a good example of that, there might be some sort of trauma left over from that, some sort of deep-rooted anxiety left over from that, where you're like, oh, I can't go through this again. So, yes, you might be much more easily triggered to then go and panic buy and get caught up in that sort of anxiety.
Yeah, I've read somewhere that, you know, this isn't just, you know, Hong Kongers being Hong Kongers, but it is some sort of unresolved trauma left over from SARS, and that people are worried, and there's a parallel, you know, and people are worried. So what about the role of social media? I mean, has it escalated things? Has it made things worse?
I mean, we like to say social media makes things worse, because it definitely, you know, everyone can post their opinion on it, whether it's a scientific opinion or a fear-driven opinion, or, you know, just a personal opinion that you usually share with your mates. We get access to a lot of different resources that we can't actually verify. There's a lot of different, you know, conspiracy theories and ideas and assessments of the situation, and we get bombarded every day. Not just social media, but also just media in general. The topic's constantly on the news, and there's always a little bit of an emotional kind of component to every news report and every statistic that we see. So I guess social media just puts it more in our faces as well, in lots of ways.
It's not just happening in Hong Kong. Friends of mine are saying it's happening in Singapore as well. So it isn't just a Hong Kong thing. So perhaps it isn't just a unresolved trauma here in Hong Kong, but it's elsewhere in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, like I say, anxiety around unpredictability and uncertainty is very deep-rooted in us. I mean, survival-wise, we need to be able to predict in our environment in order to survive. So, first of all, this is a health issue, so naturally we kind of associate that with survival at some subconscious level. And then secondly, not being able to, predict what the future will hold and whether we will catch the virus or not, even if the statistics say the risk may be low or not. Will cause us to go into fight-flight mode in lots of ways. Yeah.
How do we calm that anxiety? I mean, it seems to be, some people say it's irrational, but there may be some sort of rationality behind it. I mean, how do we calm ourselves down and everybody around us?
Well, there's a few different ways. I mean, one thing is we by nature quite often are creatures of avoidance, right? So if something's really uncomfortable or scary, we want to do everything we can to avoid that discomfort. So then we go and buy toilet paper because we get that sense of, maybe we can get some control back if we're just prepared enough.
Yes.
Whatever happens, at least we have toilet paper, right? So one of the ways of dealing with that is actually engaging with that discomfort and observing that emotion, both how we're feeling but also physically in our bodies, because that will, by engaging with the emotion, we kind of keep the prefrontal cortex, so our executive regions, a bit more online, right? We're observing it, we're looking into it, we can look at what those feelings are telling us. Why are we actually scared? What's the realistic threat? And then once we know that and get to the bottom of that, we can go, well, how can we make ourselves feel less scared? But in order to really keep the prefrontal cortex online, we need to be able to turn around and face that emotion rather than just doing those fight-flight behaviors as a response.
I seem to see that there's no end to this panic buying. I mean, you think that at the end of last week all the toilet rolls were gone, but people are queuing up and still waiting for it to be restocked. And because supermarkets aren't restocking fast enough, that worry sort of multiplies. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's like at first it's like, maybe we're just all panicking, but then because there are really no toilet rolls, maybe there is reason to really panic. So it's sort of, it's like panic on steroids.
It's sort of self-perpetuating at that stage,
Yes.
isn't it? I think one of the things that we do as humans as well is we hook onto the one thing that we sort of feel we can solve in that moment. So then we can't see the forest for the trees, right?
Yes.
A way of getting away from that is actually looking at, okay, what are we really scared of? Are we scared of running out of toilet paper? Are we scared of the health threat to our families? Are we scared of getting sick? Or maybe the economy going down and us needing to go somewhere else for our livelihoods. So really, if we kind of manage to turn away from the toilet paper for a second, then we can look at really planning and finding options and diversifying our risk by brainstorming, okay, well, what am I actually afraid of? And what different solutions can I provide to that? And getting creative and thinking out of the box. And because once we have, one of the ways of managing uncertainty is actually to really find solid and research good options if things really do go wrong, that we might have a way out or multiple ways out, rather than focusing on, I'm going to buy toilet paper and masks and hand sanitizer.
What about the sort of the value of these things? I mean, toilet paper is just toilet paper, but because they're so rare now, if you manage to get your hands on sort of rolls of toilet paper and manage to give them to your loved ones, does that also show like a sign of your love? And there was Gordon Matthews, an anthropologist, sort of wrote about this, years ago. Happy Meals gave out toys of Snoopy, and they were a real commodity because they were so rare. Boyfriends would used to queue up for 10 hours for that Snoopy for their girlfriends, and it really was a sign of how much they I mean, it's just a Snoopy doll, but they had to queue up for so long for that. So it also symbolizes something more important. Could that be something like this? I mean, people don't need toilet rolls, but because people attach or know how important they are, they're queuing up for their loved ones.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like toilet paper has become the new social glue. So yeah, of course it does. And also, there's a role of social media in there where we almost feel like we become part of a bigger group, right? Everyone's talking about toilet paper. Everyone's posting empty shelves of toilet paper, and suddenly you're part of a wider audience, a wider community, right? The downside, of course, of that is that, yes, that applies to your friends and family and your closest circle and maybe the people that are on, team toilet paper, but it also creates resource competition, which creates hostility towards, people that you might consider not your immediate in-group.
Yeah, the competition. And yeah, we are seeing hostility, people not really, they're still quite orderly, but there are sort of people, having words with each other when they're queuing out in front of a pharmacy for face masks and, you're sort of nudging other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see a lot of hostility in terms of, very strong feelings about whether or not you should wear a mask and whether the panic buying is affecting people that actually need masks and toilet paper, shortening the resources because other people are said to be hoarding toilet paper and masks. So, yeah, the hostility adds an extra element to this whole situation.
Well, interesting that you brought up the face mask. I was in a taxi and the taxi driver was wearing a face mask, and I sort of asked him, if you're alone in the taxi, why are you wearing a face mask? And he said, I don't really want to wear a face mask, but it really is for the image, and it's true, perhaps some people don't really want to wear a face mask, but it is all part of the whole healthier image to portray to other people.
Absolutely, and I think also it's a bit of a symbol of that, like what you mentioned earlier, that kind of social. Okay, we're all in this together, building that community, where often as humans we try to fix problems, right? We try to solve problems, but it might be worthwhile reaching out to your group, to your family, to your loved ones, for social support rather than going, okay, how can we fix this? Just sitting together and going, well, these are uncertain times, these are scary times, people are losing income over this, people are getting sick, of course, and people are losing loved ones over this, realistically, right? So getting together in a social setting and really talking about how is this affecting us rather than necessarily going, okay, we need to try and grasp at something to make us feel more in control.
That's an excellent point. We are in this together, which brings me to my sort of last point. Does buyer's remorse apply to this? Do some people sort of buy, 10 rolls of toilet roll for their home and then suddenly realize, what, I only have 2 members in the family. Why do I need 10 rolls? Or, and does buyer remorse feature in this? Do people feel guilty for buying too much?
It's very possible. I think usually with what so-called lower value items or staple items, buyer's remorse isn't such a strong thing because you will eventually use all those 200 rolls of toilet paper in your lifetime, I'd say. But I do think guilt plays a role in general with this, and definitely also regarding the buying, especially when you then read something on social media, and I think it happens to all of us, whether we've chosen to wear a mask or not, when we read something from an opposing opinion saying, oh, it's very selfish not to wear masks, then we may feel guilty, or vice versa when people say, oh, it's completely useless to wear masks, then it also causes some sort of discomfort, perhaps some anxiety or some shame even, where it's like, oh, maybe I am being stupid. So there's a lot of emotions being played out in this circumstance.
Yeah, wow, very interesting indeed, and lots to think about. I'm trying to think. I wear a mask, but when I'm in the office, I take it off because I assume all my other colleagues are healthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the office. But then I do get the occasional looks from other people from other departments, thinking, well, why on earth aren't you wearing a mask? So then I quickly sort of slip it up again. But it's true, other people do play a role on how we feel and how guilty we feel about certain procedures.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if we can't get hold of really solid facts where we know exactly what's going on. That makes it more difficult to either defend an opinion or also feel really certain about your own opinion on mask wearing or toilet paper or whatever it may be.
Exactly. Wow. Well, food for thought indeed. Eslyn, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and I look forward to chatting with you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noreen. Have a good day.
You too. Stay healthy. And that's Eslyn Terragina, a chartered psychologist and psychotherapist, joining us this afternoon talking about the panic buying mentality.